And welcome once again to the decline of wrestling civilization. Joining me once again, the cult icon, Eric Mutter with the Flames Toque. What's going on?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing good. What's going on with you?
Joe Martel. I don't normally talk about myself in the third person, but I forgot to introduce myself, so I had to sneak it in somehow. He's got the Flame side, got the UFC toque. I've got my It shirt going on. Do you have a shirt worth mentioning right now?
A torn up Social Distortion shirt that nobody wants to see.
Social Distortion, right on.
Yeah.
They had a theme song for a WWE pay-per-view maybe in 2004. It's the only song by them I've enjoyed. But you're more of a punk fan than I am.
Wow. I hope they got paid very well for whatever song that was used there.
Well, considering that WWE's had a lot of Metallica used, and Metallica's not a band that comes cheap, I'm sure Social Distortion did okay.
Well, hey, if I'm a band these days, the way Tony Khan is throwing around all this money for songs, I'm kind of throwing my name in the hat there.
Right, because yesterday we saw that Tarzan Boy was purchased by Tony Khan for Jungle Boy, right?
It played on last night's Dark for Jungle Boy. Yep.
I know I know that song, but go for it. Sing it again.
Oh, no, it's not happening again. I just did it once. It's not happening again.
You realize YouTube can be rewound, right?
They're going to rewind it and they can hear it there. People stop, rewind it once, and then focus on the scream mask in the background of Joe's feed there.
And Roy, the Roy mask just above it for the people that are true Friday the 13th fans that know that it's Roy and not someone else. All right, so going on in the new world of wrestling, there's a whole bunch to talk about. Obviously, we got some big shows going on tonight. We had a big amount of shows coming from Japan over the last 3 days. Raw had their first show of the new year, and they always try to do something special, which they did. We'll talk about whether it was good or not in a minute or two. But still, while there's a lot of news about what's been airing, the big stuff is still Brodie Lee. The wrestling world still recovering from the loss of Brodie Lee over a week ago. And then AEW Dynamite put out, I didn't watch it, but there's no way it wasn't a spectacular show. By all accounts, everyone has loved it, and it did amazing numbers for Dynamite.
All right, how can I sum this up? This was one of the greatest shows I have ever seen in my life. It was better than both nights of Wrestle Kingdom that just took place, and I thought those were spectacular nights. It was probably better than any Wrestle Kingdom that I've seen since I started watching them, starting at Wrestle Kingdom 9.
Okay.
Definitely the best AEW show of all time.
I think it goes to show you that the big key of what's missing through a lot of wrestling today is the drama, the emotion.
Raw emotion in this case, yes.
Yeah. Now, it's obviously not an emotion that promoters can really go after. No one wants to market off the death of one of their stars. And I'm not even saying that in a way that they're trying to leech off of that. That's no way what I'm saying.
No, they're definitely not.
No, it's not in that sense at all. But I think a lot of wrestling today is missing the emotion we appreciated back when we were children or even younger. You know, I was having this debate with another friend, coach, another one of our friends, where wrestling was about becoming a lifelong fan because you were drawn in to the characters, their stories. And I'm not saying the stories and the characters aren't good, but we're not drawn in the same way today as we were back when old ladies were hitting the heels with their purses in the front row. It's a different era. And when it comes to AEW, it's weird because I'm not trying to say I guess the silver lining of a pretty terrible situation was they were able to use natural, raw emotion. It wasn't fabricated. It wasn't corporate the way, WWE would probably do something like that. And it ended up being an emotional night for everyone who participated and obviously for those who watched.
It was the closest comparison I can give, and it really is the only one. I mean, the Owen Hart show was similar, but obviously the Owen Hart thing was brought upon by a terrible freak accident that was very controversial and stuff.
Mhm.
And this was not even remotely close to that, what happened to Brodie. So the closest thing here is the Eddie Guerrero tribute show, where Eddie died a terrible, tragic death, way too young. And then a few days later, WWE put out an unforgettable tribute show in their own right. And funny enough, if you go to cagematch.com, which is pretty much the site for rating wrestlers and matches and events, the two highest events of all time are last week's Dynamite and the Eddie Guerrero tribute show, albeit the Eddie show has a lot fewer votes because it, of course, happened 16 years ago now.
Right.
This show was very much like that, except I'm probably going to remember every single match from this show, whereas with the Eddie one, I remembered the emotions. I remembered the video clips of the, testimonials and such. I can't remember a match from that show, though. This show...
I can remember two of them. Rey Mysterio took on Shawn Michaels, and Chavo Guerrero, he dumped the Kerwin White gimmick to take on JBL, who obviously now we know how influential JBL was to Eddie's career at that point. And Chavo got the win. See,
the issue there is I remember those matches. I don't remember if they were on that Raw or the SmackDown after, because there was a SmackDown show after that nobody remembers, where there were several things too. They kind of are interchangeable in that regard.
Okay.
The feeling of that show is what I remember. The emotion of that show is what I remember. And obviously some of that is that it was 15 years ago.
True.
And the Brodie show was last week, but like going into that show, we didn't talk about this on last week's show because I had forgotten about it. And I remembered prior to the show, one of the biggest things that impacted me as a wrestling fan was the death of Perro Aguayo Jr.,
right?
Which was now, it's going to be 6 years in March.
Okay.
And, that was around the time I was really getting into Lucha Libre full time after I had stopped watching American wrestling and had gotten into Lucha Underground and was starting to get into AAA and CMLL. And Perro was a guy that I had heard of, that I knew about prior to his death, that I was anxious to see more of. And then he was gone and I hadn't gotten the chance to. And that crushed me. And that's a big reason I embraced Lucha even more, because I didn't want to waste another moment.
Right.
Not getting to know all these stars. When he died, Lucha Underground was still around then. And before their he died right before, I think a day before their next set of tapings. And they did a tribute prior to the show that I believe you could still find on YouTube. It's about a 6-minute tribute. Beautiful, beautiful tribute. And then they went out there and they taped several shows. And I remember when I watched those shows, they were outstanding. Okay. Because all of them went out there, and we can't have a bad show. We can't have bad matches. We have to do this for him, which is why Hernandez ended up having the best singles match of his career with Ricochet. And that's also the show where Mil Muertes power bombs Phoenix through the roof. All sorts of crazy stuff. Matanza ate a man on that show.
That goes with a tribute for sure.
Yeah, it is fitting. Like, they just went full bore. And I remembered that the day of the show. And I knew then there is no way this show isn't going to be great, because they're all going to go out there. They're all going to be trying to have a memorable classic match.
And that's what happened on Dynamite last week.
And that's what happened. Colt Cabana with the Young Bucks against Private Party and Matt Hardy, who Matt Hardy a few weeks ago was positively glacial in the ring. And yet he looked much better on this show. Cabana had his best performance in AEW. since he's come along.
And he hasn't had much of a showcase since then, so that's a good point.
No, he's been good, but he was great in this match. Evil Uno and Stu Grayson were tremendous in their match with Lance Archer, who came out dressed as Luke Harper.
Well,
great tribute there.
Brodie Lee from before he signed with WWE.
Oh yeah, he had looked that way for forever, but most people associate the look with Luke Harper.
That's fair.
You know, and they were in there against Eddie Kingston, who of course he was close with Brodie, Butcher and the Blade, who if you put those guys in a big situation, they're gonna just go all out and kill it there. They are outstanding, and of course they had a great match. They did the thing afterwards where Eddie got beaten up by everyone, and then he wanders right into Jake Roberts, who does a Rainmaker to a huge pop. You know, the women's match on that show, which last week you were like, that one does not look very good, was so much better than it had any right to be, because Anna Jay and Ty Conti just worked as hard as they ever have, and Britt and Penelope worked as hard as they ever have, and they pulled out a really good match. The match that Brodie's son came up with, which was the main event, was really, really good. They all worked hard there. All of the tribute stuff, the tribute video at the end with the Tom Waits song was beautiful. And there's one thing I've left out, which I have to bring out now, because it's the best tribute match of all time. It's better than the Benoit Bret Hart match for Owen Hart that happened all those years ago. Okay. I would say this was the best match I saw in 2020. The Hangman, Silver, Reynolds versus MJF, Santana, and Ortiz. Obviously, the work in the match was great, but the real things that made this, Wardlow comes in the middle while the ref's distracted. He takes out Reynolds. Who runs out to make the save? Eric Rowan.
Right.
The perfect run-in, the perfect use of Eric Rowan. He's actually supposed to be called Eric Redbeard. But Jericho is just losing his mind, so he's calling him, he's screaming, "It's Eric Rowan!" Excalibur's like, "It's Eric Redbeard!" Jericho's like, "Rowan! Redbeard! Rowan! Redbeard!" A nice moment of unintentional levity there.
Right.
And that moment is great. And then at the end, MJF, who's been just a dick the whole match, taunting Brodie's son, who is at ringside. He takes the mask off Brodie's son, and Brodie's son just whacks him with a Singapore cane, and MJF sells it beautifully, takes the best bump. It's so heartwarming. It's so great. Silver then hits Ortiz with the discus clothesline to get the pin and just breaks down in the middle of the ring, you know, and Hangman and Reynolds are trying to console him. Rowan comes back out. He's crying. He holds up that side. Right. They're all crying with each other. I'm crying watching at home. I can't imagine there was anybody who wasn't. It was like, I've never seen anything as moving and as wonderful and as sad as that. Like, that made the show. It couldn't main event because Brodie's kid picked the main event. You can't go against the kid's wishes there, but like, I couldn't believe there was a show after that match. Right. It was, I will never forget that match as long as I live. I've watched it like 6 times in the past week since then.
So it's been universally praised as one of the best shows.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, the cage match thing, the rating, and a lot of emotion. And it to me, it just shows the amount of respect people have had for Brodie Lee over the years, because he's been mostly a mid-card guy, whether you're talking about Luke Harper or pre-WWE Brodie Lee when he was in ROH and Chikara. He was very much a mid-card guy. He was never the top champion, or very rarely if he ever was. And
Ring of Honor, he was the heavy in the Age of the Fall towards the end of that stables run. Yes,
but he didn't win the title.
No.
The amount of respect he's earned over the years, and then for those who missed it, if you go through some social media and use some Google, there was a UK artist that did a mural out in
Oh yes,
England in
beautiful,
particular, but a
beautiful. I
beautiful
saw that.
mural of Brodie Lee's face. So the impact of this show and of the passing of Brodie Lee is felt all across the world.
Oh yeah.
When I say I didn't watch it, it wasn't because it wasn't from an anti AEW stance. It's more because I don't watch something that I know is going to be overly emotional. We talked about it back then. I'm the WWE guy. I still have not watched the Daniel Bryan retirement because I don't need to see that. I'm not going to enjoy having that emotion while watching wrestling. That's just my personal taste. It's the same reason why when I watch all the Futuramas, there's one episode I don't watch on purpose, and you know exactly which one it is.
I actually don't. It's either the luck
dog one,
Fryish, or the dog one.
The dog one.
The dog. Oh my god! I can't believe the first time I watched that episode, I was like, why did they do this? Why?
I rewatched all the Futuramas with in a previous relationship, and I said, yeah, this one's going to be a little heavy. And she's like, I've watched a bunch of, Marley and Me or whatever else. Nothing can prepare you for how sad this pet story is. And then it ended, and she just, why would you make me watch that? It was just heartbreaking. So I purposely avoid a lot of movies and episodes of shows that I know are going to affect me like that, unless it's something, that's canon. But a show like this, I know they involve some canon, but it was definitely more about the moments. And I'm hoping everyone who did watch enjoyed it and is still able to tune into wrestling tonight, because there's a lot of stuff going on tonight.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to be, this will be the last thing I say. I think this is going to be the defining AEW show, at least for the next little while, because I can't imagine anybody who watched this, and I perfectly understand why someone like you and many others wouldn't, because this was a tough show to get through.
Right.
Many people, were like, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen, and I hope we never have to see another one like it again. And I'm in that same boat. I honestly didn't think I'd be able to watch the show again, but it was so great that I have, in fact, watched it again since then, because it stood on its own, too. It was legitimately a celebration of life, and I can't imagine how anybody who did watch this didn't find themselves, how AEW didn't endear themselves to them after this, because it just came off so beautifully. It was
very genuine. That's the big key word.
Genuine, a true celebration of his life, a celebration of his family. They gave his child, his son, Brodie Jr., the TNT championship for life. They are retiring that version of the belt. So he can keep that for the rest of his life. I mean, that's just, and you see all the videos. You see the videos of him caning all the people backstage. He's at the New Year's party, giving the discus lariat to everybody, including Adam Cole of all people. I mean, that's a discussion for another day, but it is odd how he finds himself at all these AEW things and such.
Florida's a small I was about to say province. You can tell I'm Canadian, but it's a small state. You can get from Jacksonville to Orlando, where
and all of his people are in the company too. So that is true. But
that's also true. Point.
Yeah, this kid's beating up people from NXT and AEW and everything.
You actually were mentioning that last night on Dark, that they had some more stuff involving Brodie Lee Jr., right?
They did a segment where he had a pull apart with Marco Stunt. He cuts a promo on Marco Stunt. He's like, Marco, why are you always losing by yourself? You can only win with someone bigger. And Marco's like, and they're going at each other. Tony Khan and Cody Rhodes and the Bucks are coming out to break it up. Brodie Jr.'s beating up security. He's punching security guards, running to the back to cut Marco off. It was hysterical. And, heartwarming too. Right. He cut a promo on Luther at the end of the show. Why do you have that stupid red thing on your head? Or something like that. It was asking all the questions the internet asks about Luther, by the way.
Why is he still wrestling?
He didn't ask that.
Okay.
He didn't. We could that would have been a little too below the belt, right?
Where Dark leads into is they filmed that last week in association with the tribute show, and then tonight they're going to start the show that was scheduled for last week, but they had to move for obvious circumstances. So we're going to get into New Year's Smash Night 1.
Night 1.
For those who are going to be watching, because there's a lot of wrestling tomorrow to tonight when it comes to special shows. So let's start with New Year's Smash Night 1, the big title match for the AEW Championship. Kenny Omega taking on Phoenix as a challenger. I know you're hyped for that one.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I enjoyed, I actually have not seen the first match they had, which was in Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I did see the one that happened at Heroes Immortalis at AAA last year, which was the second best match in Mexico last year, behind only the Laredo Kid versus Hijo del Vikingo. And obviously, Kenny has since gone on to have a better match than that Phoenix one with Laredo Kid last year now in 2020.
That's true.
Yes, this is, Don Callis cut a great promo on the internet on Monday.
Okay.
To hype this match up. They have great chemistry, these two. Phoenix is obviously an incredibly athletic worker with all sorts of ideas. Omega is a very creative worker who is now hotter than he's ever been. Yes, this should be a spectacular match. It's obviously the big thing for tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff on that show, though. It's not a one-match show.
Well, there's another title match. They have the women's championship up for grabs when Hikaru Shida is going to defend against Abaddon. I pronounced it properly this time. It's
you
not
did,
abandoned.
yes.
Yeah. So that'll be pretty interesting, and that involves more of a sports entertainment aspect to it with the Abaddon gimmick. So that'll be interesting for a different aspect.
That's interesting to me because all of Abaddon's previous matches have been taped. This one is live. Last week was Anna Jay and Ty Conti's first match live, and they performed above expectations, as we just said. It's very interesting to see how Abaddon does here. She's not going to win this match. Shida's going to retain. So the interesting thing here is, how does Abaddon perform in this spotlight with a legitimately really good worker in Shida?
Yeah.
And what is next for Shida after this? Because, we're getting a little ahead, but the Britt Baker Thunder Rosa thing doesn't resolve itself for another week at most. So I don't think it's going to involve them. So what is next for Hikaru Shida? We find out tonight.
Just off the top of my head, I just realized, forgetting SmackDown, the three main women's titles in North America are all held by Japanese women, with Asuka holding the Raw Championship, Io Shirai holding the NXT Women's Championship, and then Hikaru Shida holding the AEW title.
And Sasha loves to train in Japan, so
there you go.
She's right there. A lot of Japanese influence in the women's division there.
Some other matches.
So.
Go ahead, sorry.
And rightfully so. I mean, like Shida, Asuka, and Io Shirai are like 3 of the 10 best female wrestlers in the world. So
yeah, there's hardly going to be any complaints about who's holding the titles in any of these rosters right now. And then we do have some Japanese wrestling to discuss later on. But other shows another match that's happening tonight on the AEW Dynamite special. We have Jake Hager taking on Wardlow, who you just mentioned from last week's show.
I love Wardlow. A big challenge for him in this one here.
This will be different. Big Hoss match with Jake Hager, who is very dependable as a wrestler, but has never really excelled past, above average, but never reach, or I shouldn't say never, but rarely reach a great match. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But it doesn't have to be a great match to tell a good story. That's my view of things. We got a tag team. Actually, it's an 8-man tag, but it's all the tag team division involved. We have the Young Bucks taking with tag team partners SoCal Uncensored, Daniels, and Kazarian out of that trio, and then taking on the Acclaimed along with one of our favorite teams, the Hybrid 2.
That's right. The big match, the best tag team in the world, teams with the Acclaimed to take on the Young Bucks and SCU tomorrow night. Can't wait.
Hot take over there. And then we got Cody Rhodes, who can now say his last name again, taking on Matt Sydal. So a huge night for Dynamite.
I need to take a minute. Matt Sydal is the man. That guy is awesome. That's not a shocker. He's been awesome for a long time, but ever since he's come into AEW and ever since his Shockmaster moment, as he described it, he's been great. And he's taken that ROH pure style he was doing. He's not flying around anymore as much. He does a little bit of it, but he's more now this technical wrestler, and he's great at that too.
Oh, it's very solid. His ROH title matches, or tournament title matches, were tremendous. The thing that really stuck with me, and not in a good way, with Sydal was his mic work. The third eye gimmick. I don't know if he's doing that in AEW, but it really fell flat with me from the ROH.
He is doing it. He likes his edibles. What do you want me to tell you?
To each their own. And then there is night 2 that's going to happen next week. They are most likely going to be taping it this week, but just a quick rundown. They're continuing the title matches where the TNT title, I don't know if they'll have the new design ready or not, but we'll have Darby Allin being challenged by Brian Cage.
Just to piggyback off that, tomorrow night, I love this. They're doing a Darby Cage weigh-in.
Yes.
Who's going to win that one, you think?
Very bizarre.
I hope Cage has been slimming down, maybe. Maybe he lost a ton of weight in the last week or so.
You have to lose 3 of themselves to make up for what Darby Allin is.
He is a machine, as they say. Yeah.
FTR, who is a tag team wrestling machine, taking on Jurassic Express. And then a match you mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
They've renamed their the Shatter Machine move, the Big Rig, now in honor of Brodie. Very nice touch there.
Thunder Rosa taking on Britt Baker in a match that you were just talking about related to what happened.
Can't wait for that one. That's going to be. We'll talk more about that next week. That money.
It'll be interesting to see if Baker can keep up with Thunder Rosa. I know, Britt Baker's been amazing as a character, but if there has been some criticism, it's been of her ring work, and she's
a lot better now. Lot better. I think she'll be able to keep up just fine there.
Well, when it comes to ring work where you don't have to worry about it, Pac taking on Eddie Kingston in a pretty high-profile match there, mic battle, if I ever heard of one.
Did you, by the way, did you see?
Probably not.
Eddie Kingston did a speech after Dynamite.
Okay.
That was posted online on Monday. This is like, you remember that Paul Heyman barely legal speech, which I believe was featured on Beyond the Ring? This was like the modern day version of that. This was incredible. Like, I was ready to walk through a wall for Eddie Kingston after that one. Like, that man is beautiful. The Jaguars, who AEW's, Tony Khan and Shad Khan, they own the NFL Jaguars. They should just hire him to be the head coach. I made that joke yesterday. I'm going to do it again now.
You shouldn't have mentioned that you made it yesterday. No one would have known.
Well, now they do. Now they do.
We have,
and
then we have another monster, Miro, taking on in one of his bigger profile matches since debuting in AEW, facing Chuck Taylor.
They have to do that because Trent has an arm injury or something,
right.
So they have to go the singles match. So it should be fine.
So Dynamite doing something that they were planning. They wanted to have 3 special shows in a row, which is, I think, a very smart idea when it comes to this battle for the ratings. Not that there really is much of a battle at this point, but having these special shows. Will be this
week. There will be this week, I think.
don't think so, but...
Really?
We'll get into that in a second. But night 2, I don't feel has as strong a card as night 1, but it's the main event title, so it's kind of hard to compare with that. And then the women's title, I think, is, in my opinion, more interesting than the TNT title, but that's just my opinion. Don't
Darby and Cage is not like a huge star power match, but I think it's going to be a great match because Darby is great, and I think very highly of Cage. I think he's tremendous.
One thing I feel like I'll say this a lot, and if you haven't, those listening haven't heard me say this before, this might be your first time. I don't watch wrestling for good matches because any show I watch, I'm going to get a good match. It's very rare I turn on a show and see a bad, nothing but bad matches, forgetting Monday nights for a second. But outside of that exception, and even Monday nights, we'll talk about what happened on Raw. There's a bigger story about that, but there were still some good matches. Any promotion can throw on a good match. I don't care about that. I care about the stories, and that's where I think Darby Allin and Cage is going to excel, because that story's been pretty well built.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They've been doing very good with that. All the stuff with Sting and, you know, Cody. Goodness, they've even turned Taz's son, who only can do a clothesline and a suplex, into a cult hero on the internet. People
Not that hard when you're in AEW to become a cult hero on the internet.
That's true. Hey, I mean, Brodie, right now, people are already fantasy booking Brodie Jr. and Hook at Double or Nothing 2032 right now.
Oh, internet fans getting ahead of themselves. What a shock. So Dynamite getting some great stuff going on for the next 2 weeks. Where I'm saying that the battle and the ratings won't really come into fruition here is because there's going to be so much goodwill from that Brodie show that I have a feeling there's not going to be as many people that are going to switch over to USA to catch what NXT is doing, even though it's what I prefer, but I don't feel like I'm going to be in the majority.
That definitely is possible. Some people have not really thought that will have a factor, because this is a big NXT show.
Oh, for sure.
There's no question about that. This is a big NXT show. We're not going to really know until the ratings come out. It will be interesting, though, because that show last week AEW did was so great.
Right.
And it endeared them to so many people that I do suppose it's possible that people are just like, we're going to give them our time tonight. But this is a loaded NXT show. Like, it's loaded top to bottom.
But so is the New Year's Smash for AEW. It's still a very strong card either way. I think with, first off, Dynamite wins pretty much 95% of the nights in general. And then you're adding the emotion from last week. I think it's going to be, it might be close, but I don't feel like NXT has a chance to win the night. But
I think it'll be AEW will win in the demo big, as they always do. And in the overall, I think it'll be pretty tight, honestly.
Well, just to give a rundown quickly of the New Year's Evil, we have the big rematch. No commercials. They announced that this week as well, but no commercials for Finn Balor defending the NXT Championship against Kyle O'Reilly. For those who watched the original match and takeover of 2020, I would say one of the top 3 matches I saw in the year, and I'm hard pressed.
Did it win NXT Match of the Year?
I don't recall. I don't pay attention to that
stuff. I
stuff.
can't believe Walter and Ilya didn't protest that one right there.
Well, they were nominated. I was expecting them to get a win because they kept promoting NXT UK and they didn't win anything. So I thought, well, they'll win that one because that makes sense. But no, I think it did end up going to Balor to help promote this show, which makes sense, but just doesn't feel very genuine.
No,
something
I know one person who never gives a match, any match, 5 stars, and he was like, that match is 5 stars, Walter and Ilya. So
well, they got strong competition for a rematch of what I think was the NXT match of the year. So we have that for the title, no commercials. No other title matches from NXT. Well, I shouldn't say that because they have the NXT Cruiserweight Championship up for grabs. Your favorite, Grand Metal.
This would be the only match in WWE I would watch this year. I don't know how good it'll be because, they toned the Lucha stuff down, but
judging by the whole card, I don't think they'll get that much time.
I think this might be, and I could be very wrong here, I think this might be their first ever match.
Oh. Santos Escobar, by the way, taking on Grand Metalik.
Yeah, well, Back in my day, they were known as El Hijo del Fantasma, a.k.a. King Cuerno for all the Lucha homies out there in
That's
Lucha
how
Underground World. Yeah, he was known as that, and Grand Metalik was Mascara Dorada in CMLL. They both did work in CMLL, but Fantasma, I forget when he left there for AAA. I don't think Dorada was a big star at that point for them. So I'm not sure if they had a singles match. I'm sure they probably wrestled in trios action.
Well, either way, it should be a strong match, especially when you look at the card, because one thing I want to give NXT credit here is there's 5 matches booked. They're all different styles of matches, and that's really what I look for in a wrestling show. So they have the high-flying, I don't want to even say spot because NXT doesn't really do spotty cruiserweight, but it's usually faster with a couple of flips and dives. And Grand Metalik, he's my favorite. That King of the Ropes gimmick, I'm sure there's plenty of better examples of that in Lucha, especially for someone who knows it much better than I do. But I am so impressed by what Gran Metalik can do in the ring, and I've been waiting for him to get another spotlight shot since we saw him in the Cruiserweight Classic 4 years ago.
See, the King of the Ropes thing is legit. He had that nickname beforehand. They've watered that down. He's actually even better with that stuff than they've allowed him to be, which I believe pretty much he just does that thing where he spins around on the ropes from one side to the other, and they're like, oh, the most impressive thing ever. He's done even more impressive than that.
Well, that's become one of his calling card moves, but he does a couple little things in the matches when he gets the time, but unfortunately, he usually gets 4 or 5 minutes at most, and in a losing spot, except for the last 2 weeks on Raw, but that's a different story.
Yeah. See, this is what they do. Like once every year, they give him a few weeks where he looks really good, and then he disappears for 6 months, and people are posting that meme of the guy screaming at the cat in the window, "I'm gonna get you out! You don't belong here!" That's pretty much how it goes with him. Look, if they're allowed to do what they can do, it will be better than Kyle O'Reilly versus the fraudulent Finn Balor. All right, I'm telling you right now.
Well, I think that depends on taste, but definitely for that style, I wouldn't be shocked. I prefer more of a physical, make it look like a fight style, which is why my favorite moment of Raw was not the big announcement at the end. We will talk about that, but the Riddle, not Matt Riddle, but the Riddle versus Lashley match. But again, that's what I'm looking for. And sticking with that style, a couple other matches worth mentioning. The big one is the Fight Pit, where they're going to have Tommaso Ciampa take on Timothy Thatcher in the Fight Pit gimmick. I'm looking forward to that because I really enjoyed the first one that took place in the middle of 2020 between Riddle and Thatcher.
Thatcher needs to win that match. He loses too much. He needs to win this match.
Agreed. But at the same time, I don't think Thatcher's ever going to be the top guy. He's going to be a feeder for the main event. But to keep that credibility, he has to have a couple of wins under his belt, and this is a great way, especially because
this
Riddle,
is his match. This is his match, too.
Riddle was the big prime target there when it comes to moving up to the main roster. I think we've all known Riddle was going to be a main roster project sooner rather than later. And he lost to Thatcher in the Fight Pit. So I have a feeling you're right on this one as well.
Yes, he needs to win this one.
Continuing with the bruiser type style, we have Damian Priest taking on Karrion Kross. I'm not expecting that to be a great match because Karrion Kross is still hit or miss, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling we're going to see one of...
That's the weakest match on the show.
Easily.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling we're going to see one of these two. I don't know if it's a loser or winner ends up getting a spot in the Rumble, but I'm predicting one of those two guys is going to end up in the Rumble.
Well, who's Balor wrestling next?
Well,
because he ain't going to lose here.
No one knows yet. I'm assuming it's going to be Kross.
Kross, yeah.
But either way, we'll see where it goes from there.
Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross is, I can't say what I want to say about that.
It's not an Eric Mutter match. We'll say that.
No, it is not. I would rather watch Finn Balor and Adam Cole in a 24-hour Iron Man match.
No, you don't. No. Nobody wants. Well, no, I shouldn't say nobody wants that. I am so sick of Adam Cole.
Adam Cole. Well, hey, that's why he put over Brodie Jr. at the New Year's party. He's trying to get in everybody's good graces, putting over the 8-year-old.
The rant I want to go into when it comes to Adam Cole type matches. It's weird because Adam Cole was someone that I had heard of. I wasn't watching ROH at the time when he was a big ROH star, but he was someone that you were informing me was just overrated.
Yeah,
Despite everything I was hearing, you kept telling me he's not that good. He's not that good. And it's not that I thought you were wrong, but I thought, well, there's got to be something worth watching out of him. Everybody's talking about him, and he was a huge pickup for NXT when he got signed. And then I saw him wrestle.
I will never forget that match he had with Aleister Black, who I believe I saw walking on the street driving here the other day. First time I've seen him in about 5 months. They had that match on that takeover where Andrade, who I also think I saw walking on the street here the other day, he and Gargano had the last great match of Johnny Gargano's life.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah, well, for those who don't enjoy, the Shawn Michaels over emotional stuff, and I remember that match. That match was pretty much just one spot, sell for 30 minutes, another spot, sell for 30 minutes from Adam Cole and Aleister Black. I was watching this match. I was like, this is the drizzling shits. And then I went online. Oh, it's one of the greatest matches in the history of NXT. Well, I was like, oh no.
Honestly, that's how I feel about a lot of matches. NXT is definitely one of them, especially Adam Cole and Gargano when they're involved. But I say that I feel the same way when a lot of AEW matches are well reviewed. It's just not to my liking. And another show we're going to get into in just a minute or two, Wrestle Kingdom has a lot of matches where I find that it's extended for pretentious reasons. I'm not saying this show did because I didn't watch it, but a lot of the matches, when I tried to get into New Japan, I just felt were long and they didn't feel naturally long. They were just excessive for the sake of having the length. And in NXT, that's what Adam Cole and Gargano bring to
I'll sum up New Japan for you right now. New Japan matches are done if Shawn Michaels did the agented them, but if Shawn Michaels was smarter than he actually is.
Oh, well, I was thinking more, excuse me.
I killed you with that line.
Something like that. Well, it's more that I find that the matches that he agents, it's going to happen again in a second. I sound like Randy Orton right now. We're going to have to leave this in. It's too funny. I'm going to be tearing up in a second.
Oh, my God.
It's very sad that the matches that he agents, you could tell it's an HBK style, but it's not a style he would have worked. He doesn't agent it the way he would have worked it, and that's what makes it so bizarre. I don't even know. I'm going by your word that he has, obviously done a lot of this agenting for these types of matches, but it makes sense. I see the connection between that. But at the same time, I never saw a Shawn Michaels match that was worked the way that Shawn Michaels agents the match, except for the big WrestleMania matches.
There's 3 matches, and he learned the wrong lessons from these matches. The Ric Flair one and the 2 Undertaker. But the Ric Flair one, because it has the "I'm sorry, I love you" thing at the end. Shawn Michaels learned the wrong lessons from that. And a lot of people did, because a lot of people think that moment, like the moment of that match was great. And the post and the retirement ceremony the next night was an all-timer. The match itself, Ric Flair will even tell you he didn't even think the match was that good. So,
I like it. I was there live for that show, and I still love that match. But it comes down to the emotions, very similar to Rock Hogan, for example.
And that was a case where the emotions needed to be heightened and needed to be over the top. And the Undertaker matches to some degree too. But the thing is, Shawn looked at those matches and was like, what if every big match was like that all the time? And it's like, Shawn, no. I don't know if it's a Shawn Michaels thing or if it's the workers who think that way. Because from what I've been told, Adam Cole worked this style before he got to NXT, and so did Johnny Gargano. Well, prior to NXT, whenever I saw Adam Cole, mostly he was just like, I'll let the Young Bucks do stuff and then take credit for all the acclaim that they get the match. Okay. That was pretty much my impression of the whole thing. Like that famous PWG match, which obviously, the Bucks style is what it is. People will disagree on that. But they had that match. It was Cole and the Bucks versus Ricochet, Matt Sydal, and Ospreay. Okay. And Adam Cole did absolutely nothing in that match. The other 5 guys did all sorts of crazy stuff. And it got 5 stars, and people were like, oh man, Adam Cole was great in that match. But if you watch that match, he basically does Adam Cole, baby, and gets kicked in the face a bunch of times. That's pretty much it. That's all I want to see from Adam Cole, to be fair. One more match, we got off track there, but one more match for New Year's Evil. One of the ones I'm most excited for. Rhea Ripley going to be taking on Raquel Gonzalez in a match that it's a
last woman standing. That's the gimmick I was forgetting.
If I was booking this show, it would be the semi-main, because the main event would be Grand Metalik versus Santos Escobar.
I can see where you're booking there.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Raquel's going to get the win on this one because she's going to be the next project in NXT, and I think Rhea's time is up.
Got to be going up.
Yeah, I think she's going to end up in the main roster, and we'll get into Raw in just a few. But they started hinting at a heel turn for Charlotte, and I think I know where that's heading for WrestleMania.
Oh, God. That's like that. Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Well, I have a feeling we know the winner's not going to be the same this year, and I'm hoping it's done this way. But I was hoping for Luke Harper to be in that triple threat match a couple years ago.
Oh, boy. I will give Triple H this. He was right about the thing paying off. Unfortunately, it's not going to be on his show.
No, it won't be. So NXT's got a good show coming up. Obviously, we got an awesome Dynamite tonight.
The Dusty Rhodes Classic is the next week, too, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, they'll start the Classic.
What teams do they have?
Well, you say that, but they've actually been doing a good job getting a lot of these teams on the TV screen over the last few weeks. They've brought back Imperium. The grizzled young veterans have been in the mix for a while now. They're giving Breezango some spotlight.
That's Zach Gibson and his Marty Jannetty guy.
Pretty much, but they've been pretty good. Then you got me off track. Ever-Rise.
When I say Marty Jannetty, I mean minus the, admitting on Facebook that he killed someone. I don't believe James Drake has done that.
No, definitely not. So Ever-Rise, who has been a jobber team in a lot of ways, been getting a lot more spotlight.
That's Scott Parker and Shane Matthews from Chikara.
Well, from Montreal, how I know.
That's right. Kevin Owens is best buddies. I saw them the other day when I rewatched Eddie Kingston winning the Grand Championship. I was like, hey, those guys are on 205 Live every week now.
Are they on 205 Live? I know I see them on NXT. I haven't seen 205 Live.
Their gimmick is Kevin Owens is their best friend, which honestly is a better gimmick than most people.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So we got the Classic coming up in the tag team division. A lot of good stuff from NXT. I think it's got a better card tonight, but I don't expect it to win in the ratings. Either way, you can't go wrong with Wednesday Night Wrestling, which we've known for about 2 years now.
If you put these two cards together, it would be the show of the year.
Yeah. One more thing to mention, though, for Wednesday Night Wrestling, MLW is putting on a special. It's not going to be nearly as big as your AEW, but just to quickly give you a rundown of that one, the Von Erichs are defending their tag titles against the Dirty Blondes.
Who's the Dirty Blondes?
I have no idea. It's actually a team we saw when we were watching on a weekly basis before the pandemic, but I don't recall. Leo something. Either way,
Bronson?
I hope the Von Erichs take the win again.
Yeah, well, they will, because we don't even know who these guys are.
Pretty much.
Unless the Von Erichs are coming to join the AEW tag division, they're not losing this match.
You never know what could be happening. Jordan Oliver, who's been a whipping boy for us, but you've been saying you've seen him do some better stuff recently.
He has gone from the tall, slim, homeless man's Jack Evans to the tall, slim, poor man's Jack Evans.
Fair enough. Well, I don't get the gimmick, but I'm not into that whatsoever. But he's gonna be taking on Simon Gotch, which is
that's a weird match.
Right there. Well, I think Gotch has got a great style, as we've seen from Bloodsport and a lot of others, but I don't think he's gonna get the win like we saw at Bloodsport.
Right.
I think Oliver's the real project there. But Jordan Oliver's stablemate, Myron Reed, someone we both have been appreciating.
Love Myron Reed. Love
He's going to defend his middleweight title against Leo Rush.
All right, I might have to find some time to watch that.
I thought so. And then I don't know if it's going to be the main event, but it's the biggest match of the show. We have Hammerstone. Alexander's his first name, but man, with a last name like that, you just go with Hammerstone. So
yes.
He's going to defend his open weight title against a guy called Mads Kruger, who's been a head for the Contra unit.
Yes, he's the new Contra unit guy. That's right. I mean, put Leo Rush and Myron Reed on last. That's all I'll say there. Just
definitely
put him on last. By the way, fun fact: Leo Rush was Spider-Man at Triple Mania, for those who forgot.
Yeah, we mentioned that when we did those the Marvel specials.
Yes.
Now, well, we have been talking about getting to Raw, but before we get there, you watch Wrestle Kingdom. What was your impression of everything you saw there? Because obviously, when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling, when it comes to match quality, nothing really beats that in terms of Wrestle Kingdom for sure. I know you were telling me how blown away you were. We have a new champion at the top of the card. Give me your
Kota Ibushi. That's right. Let me tell you something. New Japan had suffered a lot of criticism in the past year because they had become very reliant on the interference finishes and such. I tell you though, Geto, that guy, like people were like, oh, he's lost his touch. He pretty much used these shows to go, I haven't lost anything, man. You come watch this. You tell me if I've lost my touch. These shows were great. I expected it's Wrestle Kingdom.
Right.
You can't go wrong unless it's 2000 to 2010. Then you can. But beyond
English commentary can go wrong. Kevin Kelly can go.
Wow. I watched English commentary. Him, Chris Charlton, and Rocky Romero. I thought they were great. I think Kevin Kelly's great, quite honestly. We disagree there.
I have a broadcasting background, so I look at things a little differently. I know Michael Cole is a great broadcaster, but he's a horrible play-by-play guy because he's micromanaged by Vince McMahon. Kevin Kelly's problem is he's a good broadcaster. He has skills, horrible voice, horrible inflections, horrible on the emotions.
Some of the inflections I do think, wow, I wouldn't have done that, but I honestly think he's really good, which is odd because he used to be the guy who was like a joke as a, interviewer in WWE, and he's turned into this, at least in my opinion, really strong play-by-play guy. But he gets it. Rocky is a great color guy. Charlton is just fantastic.
British, right?
He's I believe he's British, and he's fluent in Japanese, so he translates everything. It's such he's just terrific. So
I feel like the last time I watched some New Japan, it was Kevin Kelly and Charlton, and he was definitely the highlight, without a doubt.
Right. If it would be even better if they still had Don wearing shades and negative 44 degrees in Winnipeg Callis, but we can't all be that lucky.
Fair enough.
These shows, so obviously some matches were better than others, but like the Will Ospreay Kazuchika Okada match, Will Ospreay is now a bad guy. He's dressing like Eggsy from the Kingsman movies. B. Priestley is way over there. Hey, he's basically wearing nerd glasses and a suit. He looks like a guy trying to be a British spy and failing miserably to be a British spy. B. Priestley is with them everywhere. My theory is that Will Ospreay is still deep down a good guy, but B. Priestley has corrupted him. He's basically whipped. And by the way, if you've seen B. Priestley, I would be whipped too if I was in Will Ospreay's position. So he's so great in this new role. He doesn't do flips anymore. He stopped there were more flips on Cody's developmental show than there was in this match. And all the flips were by Okada. He did the dives.
Nice.
Because, he's Okada. He can literally do anything, that man. Watching him coming out, this is going to be over the top. I don't care. I'm on a roll right now. Watching him come out, it's like watching God make his entrance in a wrestling show, pretty much. That's my pretentious moment right there. And by the way, that's a shot at Kota Ibushi, because Kota Ibushi's new gimmick is that he is God. So I apologize, Kota. I don't want to have any heat with you here, all right? Just want to get that out of the way. But that match, hard-hitting, completely different than I would have thought. Personal, great heat. Like, these matches had great heat for the fact that all the crowd can do is bang on thunder sticks and clap because they don't want them, cheering to spread the virus and everything. So that match was phenomenal. I was certain it was going to be the best match of the whole shows. And Ibushi and Naito was great on that same show. But not as good as Okada Ospreay. And then, Tuesday morning, Jeff Cobb and Shingo, big men slapping each other around, just beautiful. Tomohiro Ishii most certainly shed a tear of joy backstage watching this match. A beautiful match.
When I have watched New Japan, that open weight title is usually the best match on the card for my style. So I have no shock hearing this.
Those guys, the Suzukis, the Ishis, the Yuji Nagatas of the world, those guys are heroes. I love those guys.
Shingo is one that I've been impressed with because back in the ROH days that I would watch, he was part of that Dragon Gate invasion, and he was amazing back then. So I can only imagine with 12 years experience since I watched him then, how much better he is these days.
If he had come into New Japan a few years earlier, and he may eventually get to a world title spot, I don't know. He would have been a world champion in New Japan for sure. He is so great, that guy. Hiromu Takahashi and the ultra underrated Taiji Ishimori. What a talent that guy is. Doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves. They had a great another match where you think, they're going to do all these flips, and instead it's a hard-hitting, personal limb work, all sorts of spectacular non-flippy moves. Great match. And then Jay White and Kota Ibushi. Oh my God, I loved that match. One of my favorite matches of all time. I mean that. Just brilliant storytelling. It was very long, but there was never a point where anybody looked at their hands and wondered why they were so violent. In fact, I think Ibushi looked at Jay White and went, "Why aren't you violent enough, man?" At one point. So there was, at least in that sense, there was none of that stuff. It was just, oh my God. Unbelievable match.
The big thing that I heard over the last couple of days since that was the promo that Jay White delivered after the post-match promo, where he pretty much gave things up and just wanted to leave.
First off, one of the funniest things, somebody took a clip from that and was like, "Jay White, what's your favorite Impact pay-per-view?" And it's just 3 seconds of him screaming, "Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice," out of context. I lost my shit watching that. Yeah, so that promo has people thinking he's leaving.
That's right. And I obviously this morning was New Year's Dash. We haven't been able to watch that yet, but when we catch up on that, we'll let you know.
Yeah, next week we'll let you know. I don't think he's leaving. If he is leaving, then Tony Khan and Vince McMahon have their cell phones on standby for sure. I mean, that guy, I know he's gotten a bad rap at times. In terms of like athleticism, he's maybe not like an Omega or an Ospreay type guy who can do a bunch of flips as well as the other style of wrestling. But as a heel, this guy has been unbelievable. He's a great heel. He is a legitimately great worker, with what he can do. He's a phenomenal storyteller. I think he's going to be even better as a babyface when they eventually turn him.
I was reading that today, yeah. A lot of people are saying
this promo, I think, was an example of that. Yeah. I expect, though, he seems to love New Japan. I can't see him leaving. I think this is to set up the face turn.
I have a feeling you're right, because I haven't sensed any aspect of him leaving, and definitely, though, he's going to have people on his speed dial the minute his contract.
This is basically Ghetto is going to decide, I'm riding with Evil and Dick Togo, and it's gonna go poorly with that in kayfabe for him, but he's gonna make that decision. I'm gonna ride with those guys and Kenta. Kenta, by the way, had a really good match with Satoshi Kojima on night one, and Jon Moxley via promo did appear to challenge the winner of that match. So it looks like they're going to do that match in the States. Kenta will fly back and they'll do the match in the States. And I presume Kenta's probably going to win because I don't know when the next time Mox can appear in New Japan until the virus thing calms down.
Well, I was reading something about them having plans to do not only an English-based show, but they were planning to do something in the U.S. for their New Japan U.S. dojo.
They apparently have a TV deal.
Yeah.
They have a TV deal in the US and the UK, which is going to be announced in the few days. There's a lot of that going on. MLW is claiming they're talking to a premier
streaming service or something.
No, tier 1 TV stations, I believe.
Okay. I read streaming, but could be my mistake.
I don't know. You can never be too sure with Court Bauer and that sort of stuff right there. So
any wrestling promoter,
that's true. That's the one thing you knew, that AEW was in serious talks. Nobody was out talking about it. When they're not talking about it, that should tell you something. If they're being upfront, it's probably means we're desperately trying to get somebody's attention to negotiate with us.
That's usually fair.
Now, the Lucha Underground people should have taken that strategy. They may have gotten more nibbles.
Wow, that's a tough one. That was such a unique show. I don't think you can really promote that the same way as you would anything else. Either way, we do miss it. That's for sure.
You brought up Coach earlier. He was suggested to me ABC should pick up Lucha Underground and partner it with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah.
I don't watch TV. I don't know what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is.
Who am I to doubt Western Canadian wrestling legend Sidney Steele and his ideas there, all right? Who am I to doubt? We love you, Sid.
Oh,
best wrestler in Canada, baby.
Only because I never became a wrestler, but that's to be fair.
He better be nice to us. I put him over huge there. Put him over huge.
Honestly, one of the best minds in the wrestling business, as far as I know.
Yeah. Yes.
That guy knows what I'm looking for as a booker.
What wonderful guy. We should tell people his rant he had about the Dragon Gate incident from a few.
Oh, that was hilarious. Yeah,
he repeated it verbatim to me. The same thing he said to you. He was like, "Oh man, I would have fired the fans in the building."
Well, before we get too into the inside jokes, this is not being the elite.
No.
One last thing we wanted to cover. Definitely, I don't want to say we saved the best for last, but probably saved the most controversial for last. We had Monday Night Raw a couple nights ago. And
it's Legends Night.
Yeah, the Legends Night. And
right.
I have to admit, every time they do one of these specials, I forget how much they overdo it with the terrible WWE comedy. It's not that I was excited. Don't ever mistake me for being excited for Legends Night. I just didn't realize how bad it was. I thought, it's going to be cheesy. It was overly cheesy.
These Legends shows are generally the worst shows they do. I remember when they did, what was it, the 25th or the 25th Raw anniversary, and everybody was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And then by the end, they were like, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Why did I watch the show?
It's usually pretty putrid, and this was no exception.
I got to get this off my chest here. How can you advertise the living legend Carlito Caribbean Cool and then not deliver the living legend Carlito Caribbean Cool?
What I read today was WWE never advertised Carlito. I don't know if that's true or not. But that the dirt sheet writers got it wrong. But I don't know.
Oh man. Who knows? We're gonna blame everybody there. Blame everyone.
Whatever happened, it doesn't matter because all he would have done is been backstage. He probably would have bitten into an apple, spit it in someone's face, and he would have made a paycheck for that because that's all these people did.
He would have been the most over man on the show during that. I love that man. That beautiful hair.
Moving on. Obviously, when it came to any of these segments, the only one that really had any substance, there was two of them, but it makes sense. Hogan and Flair, the biggest two names of the Legends mentioned, had the most impact on the show until the ending, but that's a different story. Flair had a mix-up with Charlotte's match because they had a tag team match, and it looked like Lacey was flirting. Lacey Evans, not Lacey Ryan, but Lacey Evans was flirting with Ric Flair, and it kind of cost... anyone who's caught the shows previously, a little bit of a mix-up with the names once. She was flirting with Flair, and it caused Flair to somehow trip up Charlotte, and Charlotte lost her match to Lacey Evans. It was a tag match, so there was Peyton Royce was also involved, as was Asuka.
That's right. The Peyton Royce Lacey Evans team, a.k.a. we broke up the Iconics, we messed up big, and this is the best we could do, man.
I have no idea what was going on with those decisions.
Nobody does.
the one good thing is I like the idea of Lacey being flirtatious as a character trait because it's a lot better than what she's been doing. We'll see if it goes anywhere. And that's where I feel that Charlotte might be leading to a heel turn.
Well,
which would be good if Rhea is getting the promotion.
The good news for Rick is, at least, I mean, it's been about like 20 years, but at least it's not the first time one of his children has betrayed him on a wrestling show.
That is fair. And it's not even the first time Charlotte's done it.
Maybe Charlotte's gonna, start hanging out with Crowbar and Daphne too. You don't know.
We shall see.
I'm always up for more Daphne, by the way.
Won't be Crowbar, but it might be T-Bar.
Oh, that has super heat with me right there. Boo!
But I agree with you on the Daphne. I miss her.
Yeah. By the way, before you go further, I have to say, did you see that story where Hulk Hogan was like, all these wrestlers backstage are cold to me, brother. I don't know why they don't like me.
No. You know me. I don't really read a lot of these backstage story headlines, but the idea of him being surprised that people aren't comfortable with Hogan doesn't shock me that he doesn't get it.
The best thing was Big Swole seeing that and going, "Oh, you know why they don't want you back there, Terry. You know." Yeah,
there's no coming back from that. You can, especially without a real apology, but that's a different subject.
Kids, this is, if we can ever teach you a life lesson, it's this one. Don't record a sex tape with your best friend's wife. Don't do it.
That's not the lesson to learn here. The lesson to learn is not that. It's the thoughts that he shared that were on that tape that were the problem.
Don't do that. And yes, don't be racist either.
That's usually the bigger issue to me.
Yeah. Well, they're both issues, right?
That led to an uncomfortable scenario on Raw, because what ended up happening is they had a silly segment that started off with Raw promoting with Hogan promoting an H phone or something stupid. It was awful. But later on, he caught up with Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, and Hogan was with Jimmy Hart, and they had a decent. It actually turned into a pretty good promo, with both of them doing "brother, what you gonna do" type thing. It was fine. Nothing too special, but it made me smile.
Trying to give Drew the rub.
Which I get. The problem was, Drew McIntyre was getting the rub from Hulk Hogan before a match against Keith Lee. Keith Lee.
Oh, no.
Keith Lee is an African-American who wears Black Lives Matter gear.
Oh,
Hulk Hogan is promoting a white guy and trying to give him the rub. It was just... How did no one see this being a mistake going in? It was...
I would have... Oh, my God. That was definitely unintentional, because I didn't even think about that until you just said, oh, my God.
Yeah. So he was giving the rub to the white guy who was taking on a black guy later on in the show, and it just fell really flat with me. So...
When it comes to Drew McIntyre versus Keith Lee, brother, Drew McIntyre's the kind of guy I support in that situation, brother Jack dude.
There was a lot of brothers and Jacks and dudes. It was weird.
I'm trying to. Did Jimmy Hart do it? Was he like, well, something, Hulk, you're the greatest of all time, Hulk. I can't do Jimmy Hart. Damn it!
Don't even try. What ended up being really good, I think I mentioned it earlier, was Riddle taking on Bobby Lashley. It was a very short match, but you could tell it's building up to something, and I can't wait for that big match that they finally have to blow it off, because that is a heavy hitting. Obviously, with their MMA backgrounds, they could probably potato each other and be fine with it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the main event was good. It wasn't the classic the way WWE announcers are raving it to be, but it was a solid match. But we all know the big story coming out of Raw was the ending. And
that's right.
It was rushed, which makes sense because it just felt very badly done. First off, Goldberg comes out with this promo talking about how Drew's disrespecting the legends, which didn't happen. And Drew's actually been in a career mode where he's been defending the legends. He was taking on Randy Orton, who was beating up the legends a few months back, and Drew was their savior and came to respect them. So it was a very awkward promo. It was very rushed. And finding out that there was timing issues made it, not shocking. But in the end, the big part of that is we're apparently getting Drew McIntyre taking on challenger Goldberg at the Royal Rumble for the WWE Championship. And you can hear the crickets reacting online.
Dude, you know what else you can hear? Roman Reigns breathing a huge sigh of relief there.
Yeah. Well... The one thing I'll say on this is I have I don't believe. I know Eric's having some technical issues there. You'll figure it out. The big issue here is that when it comes to Roman Reigns taking on Goldberg, I don't think that match would have anything to benefit Roman Reigns. He's already at the top of the head of the table, for example. That's a big term he's been using. So right now, I don't think he would benefit from whether it's a loss to Goldberg and regaining the title or just winning against the challenge of Goldberg. I don't think it would do anything for Roman. But Drew did lose to Roman just a couple months back at Survivor Series. I'm not saying he needs the win, but if either of them needs a win against Goldberg, Drew McIntyre is the better option. It's just unfortunate that we have to get a Goldberg match out of the equation.
Well, here's the problem now. Are we sure that Drew is winning this match?
I'm pretty confident. I don't see Drew losing the title right now.
Well, here's the problem. We've talked about this for weeks now. Drew's WrestleMania matchup right now looks like it's him versus Sheamus.
Right.
Because they're obviously not pulling the trigger of that at the Rumble. And you and I have both agreed that match as a title match does not feel big at all.
Agreed.
But Goldberg winning the title, for Vince, he's going to think, oh, that's big. I don't know who he would face, but I don't know.
I don't think it fits into the plans we've seen on Raw lately. That's all.
Well, it may not, but it didn't fit into the plans they had on SmackDown last year either.
No, but that was unique. First off, the way they've been booking The Fiend, whether it's entertaining or not, is different, but they've cut The Fiend's title reign short every single time they could. So him losing the title so quickly to Goldberg, so Goldberg could go put over, it was expected to be Roman, but it ended up being Braun Strowman, doesn't really equal the same thing as what we're seeing now. Because right now, Drew McIntyre is a babyface. He's been leading the Raw brand for almost a year now, at least since WrestleMania last year. And he's had, other than 3 weeks where he lost the title to Orton and then won it back, he's been the champion pretty much the whole time.
Right.
I don't think they're going to swing that towards Goldberg the same way that they have with Kevin Owens previously. And then, as we just mentioned, The Fiend.
I would certainly hope not, but I never put anything past Vince McMahon in a situation like this. You just can't. Like,
I think that it just feels like they have a bigger thing in mind where Goldberg will probably lose to Drew McIntyre at the Rumble, but in a way that it keeps his energy going for a match at WrestleMania against someone else. So it's going to be a non-title match for Goldberg at WrestleMania. Maybe a Keith Lee, maybe a Matt Riddle. Obviously, that has its own controversy with everything going on backstage. But some sort of project on Raw where they want to get someone to the next level. It feels like that's where they're going with it. But again, that could just be my impression.
Matt Riddle will get himself fired if he faces Goldberg. He will do something there that Goldberg is going to flip his shit over. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd laugh hysterically at that, but yeah, I don't know. I would be worried. It's just me. I would be worried about that because you never know for sure. Maybe the plan is Goldberg versus Roman, title versus title, for all we know.
I guess it could happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I wouldn't say, oh, there's no shot.
No,
I
that's
would
fair.
be cautiously optimistic here.
I think most people are feeling the way you're saying because that's been the way they've gone so many times. Is Goldberg hot shot it to the part-timer and let him put over whoever at WrestleMania.
And the ratings have been so dismal too that makes you wonder there as well. I mean, it would be an awful, awful decision. I think we all agree there. There is no reason to take the title off Drew for Goldberg of all people. Like, I would rather you do Sheamus and Drew as the Mania program.
First off, I agree. The only benefit to that is the possibility of drawing in some extra ratings in the road to WrestleMania, but I don't think that will happen with Goldberg anymore.
No.
Because they've gone to that 2 or 3 years in a row now, and I think fans are, I don't know, there's so many times you've beaten it there's three allegories I'm trying to compare it to, but basically it's been beaten into the ground to have the part-timer hotshot the title and then lose it at WrestleMania, to the point where I don't think the numbers are going to matter.
Yeah, and if it's not Reigns, who does Goldberg face as champion at WrestleMania? I mean, what they just had Keith Lee lose this title match, which is pretty much an indication that he's not in the plans for the title.
Correct.
I mean,
at least
for now, I guess they could do Riddle.
I don't think so. They could, but
now, but again, if you do that, then you open if that lawsuit thing isn't squashed by then you open yourself up to that. And then otherwise, who else well, I guess you could do honestly, Bobby Lashley would be the best guy.
I can't say enough how much the Hurt Business is a shining light on Raw, not because there's because there's better workers and there's better mic workers as well. But as a unit, they are the most realistic adults in a very juvenile roster. I think that's the big issue that I have with Raw overall, and I think that's really encompassing what's wrong with WWE overall, aside from the corporate side of things. But everyone feels like they're an entertainer, and so few people feel like they are wrestlers. It's not about saying sports entertaining versus wrestling, but there's not enough people that want to be competitive, that have that urge to go out and win and beat someone up. That's safe for NXT. And then in WWE, Miz and Morrison are more interested in being entertaining and dancing, or you have The Fiend who's more interested in freaking people out, or whatever the case is. There's not enough people that just have that urge to go and fight and be competitive like it was a real sport, and therefore it feels childish.
By the way, thank you for reminding me that they could do Goldberg versus The Fiend again at WrestleMania for the title.
Well, they have. You know what?
Bray gets his revenge, and this time, no, everybody's like, do we really need him to get his revenge?
I'm both offended and interested in that idea, only because him getting the win back, that I'm fine with, but it's just a terrible way to get there.
I think the time for that is come and gone. There.
I agree overall, but either way, it just shows the dismal position WWE is in, because they've been so poorly dependent on these part-timers around the road to WrestleMania that by the time WrestleMania is over, they're not keeping the eyeballs on the screen.
No.
And I think a big part of that is how badly they've been making these part-timers superior to everyone else. Yes, Goldberg put over Braun last year, but that didn't
end up helping him at all in the
didn't
long
help
run.
Braun all that much. No, exactly. And I think Drew beating Brock worked out, but Brock had a lot more time as champion and a lot more recent history, and is a lot more credible. Even though he's 40 or 41, it's still Brock Lesnar. Goldberg is 60.
But I think he's actually only like 54. But even then, Drew by all accounts, including our own, has been used pretty well. But the rest of the show has been so bad that it didn't matter. It didn't matter that he's done a good job. The rest of the show was so bad that nobody cared that he was there. So it didn't even really end up helping him, even though it was done correctly.
Yeah. It's so dismal when you think about how many talented people they have on Raw. And I understand they don't have the name power of who's on SmackDown or any other, NXT even seems to have.
They don't have the booking that SmackDown has, at least in the Roman Reigns angle there.
100% on that one. But they've run through. Bobby Lashley had his match against McIntyre in the summer of 2020. They just did the AJ Styles match, and they kind of blew through that, even though he didn't technically lose. They did the Keith Lee match on Raw. So they've done so many things to help build McIntyre. They haven't done so much to build up anyone else. And now they're in the position they're in every single year.
That's kind of a problem on SmackDown, too. They've done a lot to build Roman, and Roman is great in that character, but Kevin Owens getting completely and utterly ruined every week doesn't really do much for him once this program is over. And then after him, it's Brian and maybe Big E.
Well, that's what I was going to say is they at least are doing something on the side where Big E is definitely going to be groomed. It feels like it's obvious he's going to end up unseating Roman down the line, maybe
You
a
would hope so.
SummerSlam.
I'm sure that's the plan by now. Whether that's the plan in a few months,
it's in pencil. It's definitely the plan in
Yeah.
pencil. We'll say it that way. And it feels like with Bryan being in the Royal Rumble, they're not doing that match between Roman and Bryan at the Rumble. So it only makes sense that means it's going to be at WrestleMania. And at least does feel like a WrestleMania main event.
You would sincerely hope that's the plan there. Yes.
Unless they're inserting anyone else, which I
yes,
hope not,
or Vince has decided I couldn't do Goldberg versus Roman last year, so I'm gonna do it this year. And Vince, if you're listening, get that out of your head. Don't do it.
If they are pushing for a champion versus champion, Roman Reigns versus Goldberg WrestleMania main event, Joe Martel, will cancel my WWE Network subscription.
Oh my God, the second time. It's going to be the 6-year anniversary since the first time you did that. We did that together after Roman won the worst Royal Rumble of all time in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And then they built up a good WrestleMania, and I was back in, though I purposely illegally watched that one and then signed up after WrestleMania.
Was it actually the build-up for, because the match, I've seen that first Roman Brock match, which I thought was supremely overrated, but I was in the minority there. A lot of people like that, and the rest of the show was critically acclaimed. As I recall, the build-up for that show was hideous, because didn't it end with the famous tug of war?
Yeah, absolutely. That was, but you're just talking about one match. They still had the Sting Triple H match, which ended up being a dismal match, but was a pretty interesting build-up.
That was like the one match where the build was good and then the match sucked, and every other match the build was and then the matches were good.
And at the time, I was excited for Bray Wyatt against The Undertaker. I thought that was going to be another win for Bray Wyatt, and that ended up being another loss for Bray Wyatt. There was a lot on that show that was worth watching, but I refused to pay money to watch it. And that's how I'll feel if that's what this WrestleMania ends up being. Because to me, the biggest mistake WWE's made is really not capitalizing. If they were to use Goldberg or any other part-timer they have to put over people, including non-champions once in a while, they'd have a better roster and people would tune in my opinion.
Yeah, well, in theory, you're right. The problem is that's what they tried to do with Strowman and McIntyre last year. And as we've seen, that didn't end up working. And it's not the fault of Strowman and McIntyre there. It's the same thing we've always discussed when Bray Wyatt lost those matches to John Cena, to The Undertaker. It's not the loss. It's what happens after the loss. What do you do after the big match? And that's where they're so bad at this, because they don't have the proper follow-up.
100% correct. I'm going in a different direction altogether, though, as I'm saying that Goldberg and any other part-timer should be used to build up non-champions, meaning put over. Let's use Riddle. I know a lot of controversial thoughts on that, but let's say Riddle beats Goldberg at WrestleMania, and then Drew beats Sheamus at WrestleMania. Now you have Riddle and Drew at the top of the Raw roster, and you can build towards something there. So having these part-timers build up current roster members who are not quite at the main event, hell, have Goldberg put over Sheamus while Drew defends against anyone else. That's fine with me too. It doesn't have to be someone who's young and upcoming. Just have Goldberg put over someone to get to the next level, because yeah, you're absolutely right. Sheamus and Drew doesn't feel like a WrestleMania main event, but if Sheamus beats Goldberg the month before, you know what? I might change my mind. I'm not saying it would happen, but have him build up other people to get them to that level.
Yes, and in theory, yes, that would work. But I think the same problem applies there too, because even then, even if it's not for the title, you still need the follow-up for those situations as well. And WWE, they don't do that. Well, they do two things very, very badly. They don't do build up baby faces well at all. And they don't do follow-ups well at all. And
You saying just two things is ridiculous. There's a million things they do wrong.
Oh yeah, but those are the two. The crux of their problems start right there.
I don't think they build up anyone, face or heel. They have challenges building up either in general.
Yeah,
but 100% you're accurate about the follow-up.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there are a bunch of things. We could be here all night. We could be here until Dynamite and NXT next week going over those problems right there. They
New Year's
definitely have
Smash
a
2 is
list.
over with, and we're still complaining about Raw.
New Year's Smash 2 is over. Darby has retained against Cage, and we're going to be like, why? What the hell are they doing with Ruby Riott, man?
She's apparently going to be in the tag division because her and Liv have had some spotlight on SmackDown. Either way, Raw is still going to be the prime discussion for us because we always do this show before SmackDown and after Raw.
Raw is bore. That's what it is. Raw is bore.
But hopefully you haven't been bored by us this week. The decline of wrestling civilization, we're going to slow things down. Did you have anything you wanted to plug?
Do I have anything? Well, my Dark review is up. It's wonderful. You should go and read that.
LuchaCentral.com.
LuchaCentral.com. Right here on LuchaCentral.com.
Mick Foley over here.
So on Friday, I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but Friday is the birthday of Ricky Marvin, who is a luchador. People, Lucha Underground fans may remember him as Bengala from season 1.
Okay.
That was Ricky Marvin. He's also famous for his runs in Pro Wrestling Noah during the early, mid, late 2000s. It is his 41st birthday on Friday. I am a huge fan of Ricky, and I am going to try to do something to honor him on his birthday. I don't know if it will be a column dedicated to him. I don't know if we will do a playlist and I will review the matches and do a column on that, but there will be something for Ricky on Friday, so be sure to check that out. He's a still a great wrestler to this day on the Mexican Indies, and be on the lookout for that. Beyond that, there's nothing else I can think of. There's been no developments in the AAA lawsuit. There's no other Lucha shows, really. Everything is shut down.
Yeah. How's Rhode Island for shutting down right now?
I don't think we're shut down and such, but I know that the restrictions have gone up and everything. To me, I do the same thing I always do. I wear a mask whenever I go out. I don't go out pretty much most of the time unless it's to go to the grocery store. So I'm pretty much just doing my part, and I just don't, I've stopped paying attention to all that other stuff because I know what I have to do.
Right.
And it's just depressing to keep seeing people who just don't know what to do and such. So I just kind of stay clear to that and make sure to do my part in keeping myself and my family members safe. I mean, my grandmother has the virus right now and is in the hospital.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she's going to be fine, I think. I didn't want to make a deal about it and such, but this is a serious thing, people.
Yeah.
So
I have some friends who lost their grandfather to it in California.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, fortunately, I don't believe I know anybody who has lost anyone for it, but one of my best friends had it. My brother had it. My grandmother now has it. My cousin's daughter has it. One of my other cousins had it. I know a lot of people who have had it, and this is a real thing. It's not fun.
I don't want to get too off on a tangent here because we're trying to keep things at least wrestling central here. But one thing I want to point out, I am not Mr. Government at all.
No. You're the Ron Swanson of this.
I'm the Canadian Ron Swanson in a lot of ways. I know I'm losing a lot of people as I say that.
People love Ron. They love him.
Yeah, they don't love his politics so much, though.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
Basically, where I'm going at here is you got to remember that with this virus, you named off a bunch of people that you knew that had it, and they all survived. And a lot of people are thinking, well, hey, they survived. It's not such a big deal. Fine. but it's still a torturous couple of weeks for many of the people that do survive. Some are asymptomatic, some just have a bad cough and they get over it. But some people still end up in the hospital and then end up having to, you know, that's life altering. If you haven't been in a hospital for 2 weeks in your life, other than for something that's planned like a surgery, to be there at the brink of death, not knowing if you're going to pull out of it, that is going to rock you. So yeah, people are surviving, but it's changing their lives.
And not just that, it's not just about you. Maybe it doesn't affect you, but you having it means you could give it to somebody else. And that may affect them, or it may affect somebody that they're close to. And eventually it will affect somebody, and it will kill somebody. So it's not just about you. Wearing the mask and using hand sanitizer and socially distancing and all that, it's not just about you. So don't just do it for you. Do it for everybody. We shouldn't even have to say this. I'm getting hot now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Especially with your grandmother in the hospital. Yes. I think everyone listening to this is going to be pulling for you. The only way it's really affected me directly is my father. He was scheduled for surgery for his knee in December. It got canceled because there was an outbreak in the hospital. He was booked to have the surgery. Then last week he was told, oh, you're going to have it on the 6th, today. And then he found out on the 5th, it's canceled. And I didn't find out exactly why, but I'm sure it's related to another outbreak. And what people are doing, apparently, is they're lying when they are asked to be admitted into the hospital. My wife had to have surgery in December and was told that the reason she had to go get a test done 3 days before was because the week prior, someone claimed, oh, yeah, I tested negative last week, so I can go for my surgery. He's in fact lying about it, and then everyone who treated that person and anyone on that floor caught the virus because they lied about having a positive result. So this is how quickly it goes. Yes, we can survive it. 99-something% is going to survive it, but it's still going to rock you. You're still going to have people that you lose from it overall. And man, we handle this properly, it's going to be over quicker.
Good. If everybody wore a mask for like 2 to 4 weeks, this thing wouldn't be wiped out, but it would be so much friggin' better. But, you know, wearing a mask, it's all become like a friggin' political statement. And it's just friggin' ridiculous. This world is friggin' ridiculous. And on that note, let's wrap this up before I start, like punching things or something like that.
You're not even at home. You don't want to punch anything in someone else's home right now.
I'm going to punch this pillow right here. Look at this pillow. Bam! There goes the pillow.
He's such an aggressive guy.
Content for the YouTube viewers right there. There you go.
Well, Eric loses his mind in some way. I am Joe Martel. We are the decline of wrestling civilization. Do not let the world decline in health, and stay safe, take care of each other, and enjoy some awesome wrestling. We got some great shows on tonight. We've mentioned, if you haven't caught New Japan, it's on Fight. You can still catch that on Fight TV. And if you want to put up with Raw, you can do that as well.
Yes. I mean, look, all that aside, look, you could stay home and watch all this stuff. Do it. Stay home and watch some great wrestling. There's plenty of it. There's also plenty of it from the past. Watch The Rock versus Triple H from Backlash 2000. It's great. The crowd is really loud. If you missed that sort of well, because there's no crowds now, man.
That's fair.
I don't know. I'm delirious. You know how little sleep I've got in these last few days?
Let's let Eric get some sleep. Have a good night.
I had to watch the pussy whipped Will Ospreay lose to Okada.
And go catch up with your New Year's Dash as well. I know that was on this morning, so go catch up with that. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.